So I want to talk about stories for the Symbiocene. And the notion here is that narrative fiction is an underappreciated tool for seeding ideas about transformational change. And fiction, of course, cannot replace action, but stories are the oldest human technology for shaping beliefs, emotions, values, and attitudes that inform our responses to real life situations. And today, audiences often feel trapped in an extractive socioeconomic system that makes us complicit in the destruction of our planetary home. But it doesn't have to be this way. Stories can also offer tools for imagining a different trajectory. So, in this presentation, I want to talk about three gifts of fiction at the time of climate emergency. And these gifts are insight into the present moment, metaphors to think with, and agency to envision ourselves as change makers. And this whole presentation is a bit longer version of a piece that was published, just appeared in the Ecological Citizen in the UK. And the QR code you see here is the code that takes you to this publication. Okay, I want to start with this book. Eleanor Catton Burnham Wood, New Zealand author. And this is an eco thriller. And in the last pages of this book, billionaire Robert Lemoine assures himself of ultimate impunity. Lemoine had just committed the worst ecocidal heist in New Zealand's history. He illegally extracted rare earth minerals from a national park. He poisoned its entire ecosystem, and he covered the mining operation as a construction project for a doomsday bunker that he was allegedly building on a farm bordering the park. Now the operation got discovered by a young environmental activist, and Lemoine is wrapping things up. And I want to share a longish quote. He knew that once rare earth minerals were in his hands, no government of any country in the world was really going to care how he had gotten them, and that included New Zealand. Sure, there might be a bit of knuckle rapping, a few warm words, but so long as there was a phone in everybody's pocket, so long as there was a screen in front of every face, so long as there were batteries and satellites and cameras and GPS, so long as there was avarice, so long as there was loneliness and envy and ambition and boredom and addiction, he, Lemoine, would be untouchable. The value of the minerals was too great. What they made possible is just too vast, too important, too desirable, and nothing would incriminate Lemoine. He would even be hailed as a liberator, the man who bravely faced down China and secured technological independence for the West. Such a powerful quote. But as happens in classical tragedies, in the moment of almost ultimate triumph, Lemoine falls. He is shot dead by an old woman whose husband he had murdered. He will never be the richest person who had ever lived. He will never be anyone's liberator. He will be exposed as a murderer whose crimes came to light thanks to the testimony and photos taken by a young climate activist. And this ending is no consolation, of course, because the unrepairable environmental damage will remain New Zealand's burden for centuries to come. So, among many gifts of this nuanced novel is a representation of the extractive logic that enables ecocide. Unless you're a lawyer engaged in a protracted battle against ecocidal lobbies, or unless you're a climate activist on the ground, few of us have any chance to grasp the insidiousness of the petronormative civilization. Next to direct experience, stories are the best tool to help us learn about how this ecocidal system works. Stories can also show how to disrupt the system and what we can do to accelerate a transition to an ecological civilization. And this insight is documented in a growing body of studies on the role of narratives in transforming human consciousness, including transformations that build universal climate literacy. In my fields, which are story systems theory, as well as children's and young adult literature and education, This body of work was launched with Teaching Climate Change to Adolescents in 2017, and by now it includes dozens of monographs, collections, articles, special issues, what have you. I want to mention a recent work in this tradition, which came out this year, Empowering Youth to Confront Climate Crisis in English Language Arts. This book illustrates a major shift, a decade in the making, in understanding climate literacy as a holistic social scientific competence. The introduction was written by Michael E. Mann, who is one of the leading climate scientists in the US. And this is what he says in the foreword. The climate crisis is far more than a problem of science, economics, policy, or politics. Fundamentally, it's a problem of ethics, particularly the intergenerational ethical quandary of leaving behind a degraded planet for future generations. So he talks about climate justice here. And he goes on, to tackle it, we must engage the heart as well as the head. And then later on, by the end of the introduction, he says, we must find compelling narratives that are engaging and motivating, narratives that convey both urgency and agency. So that's Michael Mann. So in this reflection, I want to talk about three gifts of fiction at the time of the climate emergency. The first gift is insight. The two others are metaphors to think with and agency to envision yourself as a change maker. And of course, most novels or films will offer all three and more, but I want to unpack each gift as a separate process using three narrative examples. So starting with Birnam Wood. More than anything, Birnam Wood offers insight. The insight is on how extreme wealth concentration today has become a key driver of ecocide, one that enables and accelerates human creativity toward planetary destruction. And this insight into wealth for the few at the cost of eroding possibilities for the many it's a paradox, and it's really hard. It continues to be ignored, not merely because it's inconvenient or even traumatic. It's also resisted by powerful forces, including free market logic and a kind of political discourse of normalized denial. The market framing is profoundly denialist too. It's based on mainstream economic theories such as those of William Nordhaus, who won the Nobel Prize in Economics in 2018 for his analysis that was the key work was published in 2016, Macroeconomic Analysis, in which he concluded that only at 4 degrees Celsius global warming, the costs and benefits of mitigating climate change are optimal. And he also stated in an earlier work that at 6 degrees warming, economic damage to world economy would only be mere 8%, which we now know is absolutely ridiculous. But there's also a discourse of normalized denial. So this political discourse in which we frame political institutions, frame the ecocidal atrocity in process as business as usual, including these notions that, oh, we're doing all we can. So these are very powerful forces. But despite this resistance, there is a growing realization that extractivist wealth concentration is destroying the planet's life-supporting integrity. And in this framing, the climate catastrophe is understood not as a cause in itself, but as a symptom of a larger Earth overshoot created by the extractive logic of capitalism. And one of the books that brought this thinking center stage was, of course, Naomi Klein's 2014, This Changes Everything. But the quote that I'm sharing here with you, that we need a new system, alternative to capitalism, that will make it impossible for individuals to lay waste to planetary resources. This quote comes from someone else. This quote actually comes from a 1949 essay by Aldous Huxley, in which he talked about the double crisis. He talked about a political crisis and he talked about environmental crisis. I mean, so this thinking goes way back, almost 100 years now, in terms of realization that the kind of economy, the system that we built for the planet is not good, and it's gonna lead to a disaster. So this is very sound advice from 75 years ago. And at that time, the Earth's population was 2.2 billion. The concentration of atmospheric greenhouse gases stood at 310 ppm, and there were only a handful of billionaires on the planet. By 2025, with over 8 billion humans and the concentration of atmospheric carbon exceeding 418 ppm, an exponential acceleration of the climate emergency has been correlated with the exponential rise of wealth inequality and the rise of the billionaire class, which now stands at about 3,000 individuals. So we are in a new Gilded Age, except that what is at stake is a survival of the habitable planet. So, of course, Birnam Wood as a novel is entirely fictional, but it offers a more emotionally engaging insight into the complexities, causes, and outcomes of carbon inequality than any scientific study or policy report. Plus, it's likely to reach much wider audience too. So I want to talk about the other gift of fiction, which is metaphor. The title of Birnam Wood here is a good example again, even though in the novel Catton uses it only as a name of the eco-rebel collective. But Birnam Wood is pulled from Macbeth and stands for in the play, it stands for the inconceivable. One is warned will ensue unless one changes one's course. For Macbeth, the inconceivable was Birnam Wood approaching the castle, marking the end of his tyrannical reign. For us, the inconceivable is climate collapse. So if there is a Birnam Wood for our times, it would be a human-caused collapse of the stable Earth system we have been warned about, but have taken no real steps to prevent, well, yet. So this search for best metaphors to live by, think with, and inspire action has been central to environmental and climate advocacy since its earliest days. You may know that Rachel Carson's opening fable in Silent Spring, this was 1962, she starts on the metaphor of pestilence, a strange blight, evil spell, and she uses this metaphor to talk about the effects of environmental pollution. Other metaphors have been proposed over time, of course, in activism as well as in fiction. So we have the Great Extinction, the Great Unraveling, burning ship, train heading toward a cliff, humanity as a virus or fossil fuel addict or a species at war with the planet. We also have positive metaphors that have been crafted too. Green New Deal, of course, Greta Thunberg's cathedral thinking, transition to an ecological civilization as a moonshot, seemingly out of reach yet ultimately possible, Marshall Plan for the Earth, we are nature, water protectors. So there's a bunch of very powerful metaphors that have been used to talk about our times and the challenges we face. Metaphors matter because they provide narrative containers for our values. They provide containers for our self-image, for our goals. What is believed is what is sought, and what is sought is often what is realized. Each metaphor casts us in specific roles. Each brings a set of assumptions about our circumstances and agency, assumptions we can also contest and redefine. So metaphors to think with is another gift best explored through fiction. So one of the most interesting and promising metaphors for our immediate context is a journey. A journey has a beginning and an end. At the same time, each journey consists of many beginnings and many ends interlaced on a continuum where each end can mean a new beginning. And this is also the case in Oliver Jeffers' picture books, Begin Again, How We Got Here, and Where We Might Be Going, Our Human Story So Far. Begin Again is built entirely on the metaphor of journey, and especially on the key question of where we go from here. This future-oriented beginning is couched in a reflection on three tentative beginnings of the humanity's journey, with fire as technology, with human hands that were capable of lighting the fire, and with the emergence of life from the world's oceans. So, as species on a forever journey, Jeffers asks, where do we want to go? The middle part of the story looks at where we actually are, not out in space, but still here on this dry land that where we've always been. And Jeffers introduces two metaphors to talk about our present. One is this opening, which is opening is the pages of picture book left and right. So this opening presents one metaphor, which is this competitive suicidal race to we don't know where, illustrated by a group of blindfolded humans running toward the precipice. And the other metaphor he introduces is this suicidal self sabotage of burning ship that we're sailing on to propel us into greater inequality and injustice. So we have this burning ocean liner. And sandwiched between these two paths is the alternative vision, represented by this glorious sunrise, which can be read as a metaphor for a new beginning, in which, quote, we find new ways of using the old ways, the heat from the stars, the movement of air and water, using what we find near us to make with the future in mind. So, having outlined this ecocentric goal, the narrative asks again, how do we get there? And we have the last five openings in the book, which start, which suggests that we need to slow down, that we need to start a new journey by creating better stories, bigger ones, where we all fit inside the same powerful plot, a story in which we think beyond our own lifetimes and beyond our children's and beyond theirs and beyond theirs and beyond theirs. And this is how Jeffers leaves the reader at the end of the book, primed through a set of metaphors for confronting the climate emergency as an exciting collective journey in which wild beauty and hope can be discovered wherever we look for it. The third gift of fiction at the time of climate emergency is a sense of agency and community, that we're all in it together. And this gift is, of course, linked to the work of metaphors. It's also strong in Begin Again. And Jeffers addresses it specifically in a video teaser for the book when he talks about humanity as cooperative species driven by stories. So he says that the entire book, Begin Again, was created using navigation terms so that it can help orient us toward hope. And this is what he says about hope as a goal. Hope is one of the things that really sets the human species apart from everything else. It's this idea of an unwritten future, of projection towards and trajectory towards an unwritten future. I think hope is probably the most powerful human emotion. I want people reading this book to feel galvanized, that it's possible, that we're not all doomed, and that they have a role in whatever this unwritten future is. So, this sense to be galvanized, inspired, hopeful that a future is possible is perhaps one of the biggest challenges for anyone alive today. And of course, fiction cannot replace action, but we do have stories, and stories are a powerful technology for inspiring change and giving us like a sense of an idea of where we fit in this long line of time. So this gift of agency and participation in a larger community of life, longer time span, is something that comes to the fore in a number of recent narratives. Say, the characters are two sycamore seeds, Lewis and Mervyn. They live through the Cretaceous Paleogene extinction 66 million years ago that wiped out 3/4 of the plant and animal species. They start in their seed pod in the mama tree. They travel the world, meeting different life forms, including the old one, planet Earth. And and they learn from these adventures. And eventually, Lewis strikes roots and grows into a massive tree, while Mervyn is stuck in a rock crack for decades, maybe centuries. When they meet again, one sibling is a mature tree, the other is a seed ready to germinate. And the book ends with another tree child sapling picked up by a human child today from a crack in the sidewalk and then transplanted into a pot to grow into the future. So this is Brian Selznick's graphic novel, Big Tree, and it offers the gifts of agency and community through a story of non-human characters whose lives and struggles may not be that different from our current predicament. Selznick does not offer cheap hope or a promise of success. What the story centers, though, is the thrill of belonging in a larger community of life and the sense of responsibility we all have to stand for life every step of the way. So, without any direct call to action, the book does offer a clear message about everyone's responsibility to do our part to stop, contain, and mitigate destruction. Lewis and Mervyn learn this through their adventures, and at some point, Lewis is the first one to tune in to the voice of the old one, to the voice of the planet Earth. And she says at some point, I'm hearing this voice, and I think this voice wants us to help with something. I think we might have to save the world. Um, for Mervyn, this realization takes centuries. And when he eventually has a conversation with Earth, with the planet, he asks what was meant by the warnings passed to Louise. And here is a longer quote. So Mervyn says, I know I'm alone now. I'm very small. I'm stuck in a ravine without any fluff at all, but I want to help. So the Earth replies, small things can grow and you can work with others. That's called a community. And we can figure out how to save the world together, said Mervyn. That's the only way to do it. Do you think we can save you? Mervyn, I'm not sending out the message for myself. You're not? But aren't you the... Yes, but I will survive. I have survived since the beginning. I have survived fires and floods and eons of ice. 1 billion years goes by pretty quickly for me. No, I'm not in danger. But if you're not in danger, who is? You are, Mervyn. All life's in danger. Remember, life began as a gift, must always be treated as such. No matter how unstoppable the danger seems, no matter how unavoidable, there's always something you can do. So this is what Mervyn hears. And like entities of Mervyn's time, we too have had our distractions. We too have refused to hear the voice of the old one. And like Mervyn, we need to engage in this conversation. There's always something we can do. There's always something we can do to honor the gift of life on a habitable planet. This is where we are. We are at war with the planet, but we have an opportunity of a transition to an ecological civilization if we muster the agency and community. And this is what fiction reminds us of. So, looking ahead, we will need to find new and creative ways to leverage stories as tools for the societal transformation toward the transition we want to see. Because the future is yet unwritten, and we all have a role to play in how